This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Microsoft Word 3. In this class, we'll be kind of shifting gears for what we've been discussing in the previous two Word classes. Instead of building a traditional document, in this class, we're going to focus more on creating a graphically rich or graphically oriented document. Okay, or more specifically, in this class, we will be creating a newsletter. So we're going to be using, almost exclusively, we're going to be using something called objects to build our document, and I'll talk about that in a second, what those are. Okay, text boxes and tables, as you see here, those are just a couple examples. Now, before we get started, I just want to remind you that we are using Word 2019 in this class, which is one of the more recent versions of this program. As long as you have access to Word 2007 or later, or if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, okay, you'll find that whatever you learn in this version can be easily applied to those other versions. All right. So, one thing we'll be doing in this class quite a bit is creating and using text boxes. And text boxes come in all shapes and sizes. They don't always look, look like boxes. We can format them in a number of ways, as you can see here. These are just a number of examples. In fact, you can hide the outlines of a text box so it doesn't even look like a text box. Okay, now this is a text box, but the more general term for what this is called an object. So whenever we use Microsoft Office, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint Publisher, all those programs come with objects. Objects are basically graphics that you can place on top of your work area. You can move them around, you can resize them, you can format them in a number of ways, as you can see here. You can change the way they look, the way the text looks, etc. Okay, so again, in this class, we'll be working primarily with objects to build our newsletter. Now, a text box, more specifically, why use the text box when we could just type right onto the page? Well, because when we type onto the page directly, we're locked into the line spaces essentially. Okay, we're embedding something into the document itself. In the case of a text box, however, we can move it around. So it's great for something like a newsletter that takes several revisions over time to get it just right. So if you decide your text would be better off in a different location in your document, you could just move it. You don't have to retype anything or anything like that. You have a lot more flexibility and freedom when we use objects. All right, another kind of object is a picture, as you see here. And uh, furthermore, we can layer objects on top of one another. So that's what we've done in this example. We actually have pictures essentially on top of text boxes. And you can put a picture directly onto the page. It's really kind of up to you how you want it to function. Now, in this example, we have a few objects and a couple other features. So let me just go over what we're looking at here. And this is kind of something similar to what we'll be doing today. So as you see at the top there, it says a table, a text box, header, footer. Let me just move my toolbar here, sorry. Page border, word art, text, and pictures. Okay, so I'm not going to go in that exact order. Let me just review what is listed up there. All right, we do see a text box, which is what we see right here where it says weekend schedule. Okay, so in that case, we just have a box. We've typed some text into it. And like I said, if we need to, we can always move that text box. We can resize it and format it. Now, inside the text box, we have actual text, of course. And the way that text is formatted, okay, it's kind of has a little bit of artistic flair to it. Okay, in that case, it was built using something called word art. All right, word art's been around with Word for a long time. They're essentially just built-in, ready-made sets of formatting options that you could just quickly apply to your text to just plus it up a little bit without having to tweak it bit by bit or piece by piece. Again, we'll kind of see how that works in a little bit. So that's called word art. Now, underneath the text box, we have a table, which is the actual grid you see there. If you've ever used Excel, okay, it looks very similar to an Excel worksheet. Same idea. We have vertical columns, in this case 3, and then horizontal rows, in this case 4. And that's what makes up our table. And a table is made up of individual cells, and into each of those cells you might want to type something. As we see here, we have some regular text. You could also, again, layer your objects. So we have pictures. inside of the table. So pictures, another kind of object. So text boxes, tables, pictures, 3 different kinds of objects. Now we also have a header, footer, which we reviewed in Word 2. Remember, in the top margin of the page and in the bottom margin of the page, we're able to put in information, and we would call that the header for the top and the footer for the bottom. And usually we use those, the headers and footers, for identifying information, the author, the date in which the document was created, a page number, etc. Okay, things that don't necessarily have to do with the actual content of the document, more to do with who wrote it, when, and how we can sort through it. Now, last but not least, we also have a page border, as you can see going around the page. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but a page border is actually not an object. It's a bit different. It is a design feature. So the best way the way I like to explain things like page borders that are design features versus objects is that a design feature such as a page border is embedded into the document itself. Okay, you're kind of like overhauling the design of the actual page, whereas an object is placed on top of the page. That's why we can move it around and resize it. Okay, so if you picture a piece of paper in front of you, if you were to color it in, okay, with a crayon or a marker, that would be a design feature. You're actually embedding that into the page itself. You can't really do much with it after you've done it. An object, on the other hand, is like if you take a Post-it note and stick it on top of your piece of paper, and then you could always remove it, put it somewhere else. All right, so design features are embedded, objects are placed on top of the work area, 2 different things. And we just have a quick example of kind of like we saw before with the text box with the outlines hidden. In this case, we also have the table with the outlines hidden, just in case you ever want to kind of do something like that. All right, and actually we will do that a little bit later in class. Now, today we're going to be building something just like this here, a newsletter. Okay, and this newsletter is going to include the following: a header and footer, 3 text boxes, a table of 4 rows and 2 columns, some word art, pictures, text, and a page border. All right, all the things we just discussed in the previous slide. All right, so what I'd like to do now is put this away and jump into Microsoft Word. And we're going to be building one from scratch. So I'm going to launch Word from my taskbar in Windows 10 here. As I always say, just launch Word from whatever access point you're used to. That's fine. All right, so just a quick reminder that when we launch a Microsoft Office program, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Publisher, the first screen we come to is a start screen, which contains a list of recent files you've created in that program on the left here. So in this case, we have Word documents that were recently created and saved. Notice Words 1 and 2 for previous classes. And on the right side is a template gallery, which contains a large, vast number of those built-in ready-made templates that these Office programs offer you. Okay, and this is kind of an important thing to just briefly go over again, especially for this class, because oftentimes when we need to create something that's very graphically rich, that uses a lot of different objects and design features, sometimes templates kind of get us there quicker because they give us a place to start. Because remember, a template's already designed. So just to show you a quick example, if you use one of the categories up here next to suggested searches, if I, for example, want to create a flyer, I can select flyer, and I get a bunch of different templates based on different specific types of flyers. And remember that once you come to this page on the right, you'll see a vertical scrollable list of many categories, in addition to what you saw on the initial screen. So if I need to create a party invitation, I would just select the template and then click create down here. And as you can see, it's like I said, it's already built, already designed. Okay, everything you see there is exactly how it will look. The only thing you need to do is erase the generic text and plug in your own unique text. All right, templates are fully customizable. You can change pretty much everything about them. They just give you a place to start. So you can either stick to how it is exactly, or you can customize it if you need to. But again, we're going to be creating one from scratch. So I'm going to go back. I'll go to the upper left-hand corner, click on the back arrow. And the very first template in that template gallery, blank document, which is technically called the normal template, we're going to click on that to start a new document. All right, so here we are in our blank document. Now, in words 1 and 2, we did kind of go over the fundamentals about how we type onto the page here, type up a traditional document, okay, essentially the mechanics behind the actual word processing application. Things like text wrap, using your enter key to create new paragraphs. We talked about the insertion point quite a bit in those 2 classes, all right, the importance of that insertion point, which is still important for today's class. But as this is our Word 3 class, I don't want to go over all those things again. We're just going to kind of jump right in. All right. As I did mention this last week that once we get to the level 3 classes, I like to kind of jump right in because we've covered a lot of those fundamentals at this point in quite a bit of detail. All right. Now, but what I do want to cover again real quick, just a couple things. Remember the underneath of the work area is your status bar, that light gray bar at the bottom, which includes on the very left side a page count indicator, a word count indicator next to that, and over to the right, some quick ways to change the view of your document, and most importantly, in terms of the view, there's a zoom level there. Okay, so if at any time you need to zoom in onto your document or zoom out from your document, that's the easiest way and quickest way to do that. Now, above the work area, we have the menu that holds all the tools available to us in this program. And remember that when we are using Office 2007 or later, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Publisher, we call this the ribbon. And the ribbon is organized by a series of tabs. And I'll click on them real quick to review them. So as we can see, the Home tab is already turned on. It's already selected. Next to that, we have Insert, Design, Layout. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag here. References, Mailings, Review, View, and Help. And as I always remind you, this Acrobat tab, just disregard that. That's something specific to my version of Word. Pretend that's not there. You likely don't have that on yours. Okay. So as you saw, when you click on a tab, you get a different set of tools for each tab. Now I'm going to go back and click on the Home tab again. Now each tab is further broken down into more specific categories, and those categories are listed at the bottom of that tab, left to right. And let's pretend this one's not here. Okay. So these categories are called groups, and they help you narrow down the tool you're looking for. So in the Home tab, in this example, I have a clipboard group, a font group, paragraph, styles, and editing group. Okay, also remember that in many of these groups, we have that access point in the bottom right corner, it's that diagonal arrow, and that's called the dialog box launcher. And that will typically give you access to extra tools that are not in the ribbon, and in many cases, the same tool. So I'll use the paragraph group as a quick example. I'll click on that dialog box launcher, and here is the paragraph dialog box. So remember, actually we use this specific one in Word 2. I told you I personally like to use this one myself. So the dialog boxes, they typically contain the same tools that are in that group in the ribbon, but instead of using icons as access points, they kind of lay everything out in a nice plain text format. So sometimes it's a bit easier to find the tool you need using a dialog box. Also, dialog boxes often contain extra tools that are not in the ribbon itself. So sometimes we prefer to use these dialog boxes, and sometimes we have to use these dialog boxes. At the moment, however, I don't need it at all. So I'll go to the bottom right-hand corner and click on Cancel to close it. All right, last but not least, in terms of your ribbon, at the top left corner, we have that quick access toolbar all the way up there where I'm drawing with the red pen, top left corner. Remember that you can add additional access points to your favorite tools so you can get to them faster. All right, in the quick access toolbar, it's essentially static or stationary. It doesn't change depending on what you click down there in the tabs. So to add tools to that quick access toolbar, go to the very right, click on the icon for more options, which is the triangle with a line over it. It will give you a preliminary list of some tools that you can add. But if you want to get to all the tools in the ribbon, go down, click on more commands. And from this dialog box, you can add whatever tools you want to your quick access toolbar. You just have to add them one at a time. Select the tab which that tool is found first, like so. Select the specific tool or command from this list, and then click add here in the middle. Repeat that process for each other tool you want to add. Once you're done, click OK in the bottom right, and then it will be available in your quick access toolbar. All right, also a great resource if you have trouble remembering where a certain tool is located in the ribbon, just add it to the toolbar and it's always right there. All right, so without any further delay, let's start building our newsletter. Okay, now we are so for today's activity, we're going to be pretending that we own a bakery. So we're going to create a newsletter. Let's say a February newsletter that we're going to distribute to our customers. All right, an actual physical newsletter we're going to send out in the mail to several of our customers. And in a second, we're going to put up our bakery name. But before we do that, I want to kind of add a couple things first. First of all, one thing you might want to add to your screen, which might help you, okay, you might want to use it in your view tab. So Word comes with rulers that you can sometimes use to be precise with measurements or how things are aligned. So whenever we use Microsoft Office, whether it's Word, Excel, etc., and we want to kind of add things to our screen, not to the actual document or project itself, but just to the screen, those kinds of things are going to be in your View tab. So let's click on the View tab. Okay, and down here in the Show group, we have Ruler. I'm going to click that and turn it on. And yours might already be turned on. That's okay, but this is how you can turn it on and off as needed. So now that we have it on, we see a horizontal ruler at the top of the page going left to right, and a vertical ruler on the left side going up and down, of course. Okay, and you'll see some alignment tabs there or stops on the very left. For example, I'm at the top ruler right now on the very left side, on the very right side. Those essentially show you where your left align and your right alignments are set. Okay, which you could always change by clicking and dragging on those to, if you want to customize your indents or indentations. Also, the gray areas at the left and right, and in this case on the vertical ruler at the top and bottom, those indicate your margins. So remember that in Word, a normal document or normal template is set to 1-inch margins on all sides, top, bottom, left, and right. All right, but that's just what those dark gray areas are showing you. Those are your margins, those empty spaces around all sides of the page. All right, now there are other ways to kind of make sure objects align nicely to each other. Measurements are good, or the dimensions, but I'm just showing you if you want to use the rulers as a sort of way to supplement that, here's where they're available. Now, speaking of the margins that we just talked about, the next thing I want to do is insert a header and footer. And remember that the header goes into your top margin and the footer goes down here into the bottom margin of the page. So let's start with that, and then we're going to move on to the actual newsletter. So remember, when we are inserting a header and footer, we are leaving the normal text area to go into the margins. So it's kind of a manual process. So we need to manually insert a header and footer. So we go to our Insert tab, which, by the way, is where all of your objects are also located, so we will be using this insert tab quite a bit today. In your insert tab over to the right, you have your header and footer group. And remember, if some of the buttons or icons look a little different on your end, that's okay. It just has to do with my screen resolution. Okay, but it's going to have the same tools. So in the header and footer group, we're going to click on header. And we're going to bypass all these built-in pre-designed headers and go almost all the way down and click on edit header to create our own from scratch. And that's going to put us up into the header position, and notice the dashed line indicating where the top margin begins. So we start off, we are left aligned as usual. So in that spot, we're going to put in our first and last name. Of course, your first and last name, not mine. I'll zoom in a bit here so we can see that better. I just want to get, I think 150s. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now we cover this in Word too. We're going to create a center section and a right section. Before we do that, I want to remind you of an important addition to our ribbon right now. There we go. All right, so up there in the ribbon, notice we have a new menu called Header and Footer Tools, and under that is that special Design tab. Okay, so remember that when we work with several of these commands or tools from the Insert tab, all right, we're going to see this a lot more today because we're working with objects. These tools come with what are called contextual menus. Contextual menus contain a specific set of tools that we use in conjunction with the thing we're working with, in this case, headers and footers. Okay, and remember, it's called a contextual menu. Oops, sorry, there we go. Because if I leave the object, okay, or in this case, the header, the menu goes away. If I return to it or select it, the menu comes back. Hence the term contextual. And again, we will be seeing a lot of contextual menus throughout class today. So let's go back to the header itself. So right now, your insertion point should be at the very end of your last name. And what we want to do now is create a center section to put in maybe something like February newsletter, and a right section where we're going to input a date. Now, we can't just use left, center, right alignment from our home tab, because that's just going to move this text to the center. We don't want to do that. We want to create what's called an alignment tab, so that when we hit the tab key to indent, essentially, it's going to go right to the center. Okay, so in your special design tab under header and footer tools, that's where I am right now, we have the position group here, and right above that is a tool called insert alignment tab. Let's click on that. This little dialog box will open. As you can see, it's already set to alignment center, so we're going to leave that alone. We do want it relative to the margin, okay, not the indent. All right, and essentially we're just going to leave all this alone. There's really not much, there's nothing we need to change here for this particular thing we're trying to do. So we're just going to click OK, and then our insertion point moves to the center. All right, and if for some reason you lose that, remember your tab key will get you back. That's what you're creating, a tab. So now that we're in the center, I'm going to put in February newsletter. Oops. Now we're going to go to the right, so we need to create a right alignment tab. So I'll go back up to the position group, click on Insert Alignment tab, and change it to right in that bubble there. Click OK. My insertion point moves over to the right margin. Oops, I've done this before where I create an extra space by accident. Let's try this again. There it goes. All right, if yours happen to drop down, remember, just click back next to newsletter and hit tab, and you should be set. You see, it's created another line. Backspace over that line. Let's try this again. my tab still there? It is. Good. It's registering something. Let's try this. Yep. See, my insertion point's at the bottom, but it's typing up at the top. A little glitch there. I'm trying to fix that, sorry. Let's try this. Let's undo. And create a new one. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're going to insert a date. Now remember, when we use Microsoft Office, we don't type in dates ourselves, we let Office do it for us. So right up there in that special design tab, we do have over to the left in the insert group a date and time tool. Let's click on it. And just select the format of choice, whatever you like. I like the third one down myself. And remember, one of the benefits to using the date and time tool rather than doing it yourself is the update automatically box here. All right, so if you're creating a document that's taking several revisions and you want each of those revisions to reflect the current date, it will just update the date for you without you having to change it. Okay, but for now, I'll just select my format and click OK. And there it is. Now we want to put in a page number into the footer. And remember, we don't have to do that as two separate steps. In other words, we don't have to go to the footer and then insert a page number as a separate step. We could just do both in one shot. So up there in that special design tab under header and footer tools, to the left is the header and footer group. Let's click on page number. And as you can see, once we click on that, we can assign it a location and insert it in the same step. So we go to bottom of page, which is the footer. And then on the right side, you can just select one of these built-in styles. All right. You can see the first three are pretty simple. Page number on the left, center or right, depending on your preference. I like the center, so I'm going to click the one that says plain number 2, and there's my page number. And remember that headers and footers are running or continuous. So if I end up creating a second page, the header will automatically apply to that page, and the page number will just update accordingly, page 2, and then so on and so forth. Okay. And if you ever have any questions, having different headers for different pages, it is possible. It can be a little bit tricky. So remember, you can always just use our tech class email if you ever have a question about that, how to do that. But this is just a standard header and footer. So now we want to leave the header and footer. So we could either go back up to the ribbon here and click on the X on the very right that says close header and footer, or you could just double click into the normal text area and you'll do the same thing. You'll just leave the header and be back on the first line of your page. Now at this point, you may want to save your work. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go to the File menu and go down to Save As. I don't want to save it to my OneDrive account. I'm going to save it to the actual computer. So I'll click on this PC and then I'll select Browse down here at the bottom, which will browse my folders. I'll select an appropriate folder and give this document a name. So remember that Microsoft Office, typically in Windows and I believe on Macs as well, they will direct you to your main documents folder. All right, but you can always put it wherever you want. So in my case, in my documents folder, I have a more specific subfolder called class samples. I'm going to put it there. You can just put it in your main documents folder or wherever you want. That's fine. So I'm going to double click on class samples, open it up. Now I'm inside of that folder. And then I'll come down to file name and give it a more unique name. Right now it's called doc1, which is not very specific, way too generic. So maybe I'll call this, again, February newsletter. If you want to call it Word 3 practice, whatever you want to call it is fine. Just something that identifies what the document is. So we've selected a folder, we've given it a more unique file name, and now I'll just go down here and click save. All right. So let's get into the fun part. Now we're going to insert a text box, and into that text box, we will put in our company name, which by the way is called Tasty Pastry Shop. So let's go up to our insert tab, because remember that's where objects like text boxes are located. Okay, in the insert tab, over to the right, we do see the text group. And in that text group, you will see, of course, the text box. So let's click on text box, and just before we do anything, let's just kind of review what it's showing us. So we have some built-in text boxes. So kind of like what we saw with headers and footers, okay? It's almost like, think of these as templates for specific things, all right? They're just specific kinds of text boxes in case you want to have some kind of unique design, okay? But we're just going to build a generic one from scratch. So we're going to bypass these built-ins, and then we're going to click on Draw Text Box. Now, a couple things here. First of all, when we clicked on Draw Text Box, notice our mouse pointer turns into a plus sign. That is the cursor for drawing. Whenever you see that in Word, that means you're drawing something. Now, with objects, typically you can either draw them or you can insert them directly onto the page, which we will see with tables and with pictures. Okay, now when we insert an object, it's going to go where the insertion point is, which is important. Kind of like what we saw in words 1 and 2, the insertion point, remember, it kind of acts as a locator, tells you where something is going to take place on the page. But in this case, we're drawing an object, which gives us more freedom from the start. We can put it wherever we want. We're not locked into that insertion point. Now, when we draw a text box, or really when you draw any object, as we saw in Word 2, remember we did the star, okay? All we're really doing is just clicking, holding, and dragging and stretching it out, resizing it to a specific size, and then we let go when it's approximately the size we want. And I like to work in a diagonal direction like so, because it works a bit faster. You're gonna open up the object vertically and horizontally at the same time if you do that. So I'm going to use my insertion point as a kind of a guide as to where I should start on the left margin. I'll click, hold, and drag. Just kind of work in a downward right diagonal direction. And if you see my ruler on the left, I'm kind of stopping at approximately an inch. Looks pretty good. It might be hard to see, but don't worry, we can fix that in a few minutes. So I am about an inch high right now, and I'm bringing it to the right. And okay, again, if I cross into the right margin, it's not a big deal. I can fix it. But if you look up there, you see your ruler. Remember the dark gray area. There's your guide. Also, your header, where it says 2022. Okay, that's stopping at the margin. So you can eyeball it, try to get it close to that margin, and then let go. So now we have a text box on the page. So a few things. As I said, objects, they can be moved, they can be resized, they can be formatted. So if we look at the text box itself, all right, first of all, we know it's selected by these, because these little dots around it in the corners and in the center of the top, bottom, left, and right. But more importantly, those dots are what are called resize handles or sizing handles. When you point at any of those dots, when you point at any of those handles, your mouse pointer turns into a two-way arrow. And if you click, hold, and drag with a two-way arrow in really any direction, you will resize the object. Okay, so we can always change the size as many times as we need to. Now, if we point between the handles, our mouse pointer turns into a four-way arrow. If we click, hold, and drag with the four-way arrow, we can move the object around. Okay, so four-way arrows to move, two-way arrow is to resize. We put it back by undoing it. There we go. Now, last but not least, we can also format this text box in many ways. We could fill it in with a color. We can give it some kind of effect like a 3D or shadow. All those kinds of things, those formatting choices are in the ribbon. So once again, we get a contextual menu. In this case, it's called Drawing Tools. And under that is a special Format tab. And in that Format tab, as you can see, we have a number of tools we could use to format this particular text box. Also, tools we could use in the Arrange group here to kind of control the layering of this object with other objects potentially. Also, the way it's aligned on the page. We'll explore some of those as we go through. Okay. Typically, most objects you work with, they're always going to have an Arrange group that has a lot of the same tools, because we often need to control the layering, how it's functioning with the text around it, etc., etc. Again, things that we will explore as we go through. So real quick, first of all, if you want your text box to be the same as mine, okay, the easiest way to make sure it matches up there, make sure your text box is selected. In that special Format tab, all the way to the right is a size group, okay? So I actually have it 1 inch exactly up and down, and underneath I have it at 6.5. Now that might change, the 6.5, but the 1 inch I want to keep. And you'll notice that this is kind of another way to resize an object very quickly to something exact or precise. You can actually just type right into the box. If I want to make it 2 inches, I just type in a 2, press enter, and now it's 2 inches. Now I'm just going to undo it real quick. All right, so you can actually use that not only to make sure the dimensions are the dimensions you want, but also to change them to something precise. All right, so let's go down to the text box. I always like to, I'm going to enter some text, format the text, and then format the text box after. I find it's easier to do it that way. So I'm going to click into that text box, make sure you have a blinking insertion point in there, and we're going to type in Tasty Pastry Shop. All right. So now we're gonna, of course, we're gonna format this text a little bit. Okay, it's way too small. We probably want to center it, etc., etc. So let's, like I said, let's format the text first, and then we'll deal with the text box after. So the first thing I'd like to do, oh, and I should mention, by the way, okay, though we have a lot of formatting tools or formatting commands in our special Format tab up here, we don't have to just use these. You can still use some of the more basic formatting commands from your Home tab, things like font, font size, bold, italic, etc. All right, we could still use these. Even the paragraph tools, it's left, center, right alignment. All right, a lot of these things you could still use. Okay, the special Format tab are essentially just extra tools, okay, that we could use on top of those. So speaking of that, I'm going to go to the Home tab first. And what I'd like to do first is just increase the font size. So I'm going to, you can select the text as we've done in Words 1 and 2 before we set up a new size. Or if you just click on the outline of the text box itself with that 4-way arrow, you will select the whole text box. And whatever you change in terms of your text formatting will impact whatever's inside of it universally. All right, so by selecting the text box, I can go up to the font group in my Home tab, go to where it says 11, and I will make it 28. All right, and by the way, I've done this activity many times before, so I just happen to know that 28 works nicely. Of course, things like font size, a lot of these formatting options often take a bit of trial and error. In this case, though, I know already that I want to make it 28, so that's where we're going to make it. All right, we should also change the font itself, maybe something a bit more unique. Calibri, which is what it's set to right now, is a bit, bland. All right. So maybe use something a little bit more, like I said, a bit more unique. So next door, we'll go to where it says Calibri. That's our font type. Click on the drop down. And I always like to use one called Bauhaus 93 for this one. You could really use whatever font you like. Again, it's Bauhaus 93, Bauhaus, and there it is. Let me just see something real quick here. Okay, good. All right, now, one last thing in the Home tab. I want to also center the text in the text box itself. All right, so, and I mean horizontally center it, left to right. So we could just use the left, center, right alignment tools that we've used before. So remember, make sure your text box is selected. In the paragraph group in our Home tab, we'll click on Center Alignment here and center that text. And remember that it's centered in the text box, not necessarily on the page, because we need to make sure the text box itself is also centered on the page. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But right now, it's centered in the box. That's perfect. Now we want to do a little more. I want to add a little more artistic flair to the text. Okay, and a quick way to do that is to use Word Art, which is going to be in your Special Format tab. So let's click on that Special Format tab under Drawing Tools. So right here we have what's called Word Art Styles. And whenever you're using an Office program, whenever you see that word styles, okay, they're basically they're kind of like built-in, ready-made sets of formatting options. So they're kind of all it's collecting a bunch of, or it's combining a bunch of different formatting options to create a specific style. So the idea is that you can select the style that's already built and you don't have to change it. All right. So instead of building it piece by piece, it's a bit faster. Now, in the Word Art Styles group, you will see these three little samples, or basically just your first three options for different styles. But in the bottom right is the icon for more options, the triangle with the line over it. If you click on that, you'll get more. All right, so these are all different Word Art styles. Again, you can customize them. They just give you a place to start. And if you point at any of them, you get a little tag there that essentially tells you how it's built. So in this case, Word Art styles are combining three different elements: a fill color, an outline color, and an effect. So we see right here. Oops, let me get that back. Fill black, outline white, and then we see hard shadow, which is a specific kind of effect. So with all that said, first I'm going to click a style. I'll use this one here. It's the second to last one. Now, if I want to customize those elements, fill, outline, and effect, well, right next door to Word Art Styles, which you probably don't see too well here because of my screen resolution, I apologize, but we do have text fill, text outline, and text effect. So for example, if I don't like the white fill color, if I want to give it something different, I can go to text fill, which I'll do right now, and maybe make it like blue. All right. Now the orange you see is two things. That is an outline, but also a shadow effect. So first I'll just go to text outline. Maybe I don't like the orange. All right, I'll just make it black. And then if you want to change that orange shadow, we can go to text effect here. And we can go to shadow. All right, now one more little kind of sort of a little detour just for 1 second. when we work with Office and we're dealing with a lot of different formatting options. So we already talked about the contextual menu, which is a special menu we get for specific kinds of objects. But Office kind of takes it a step further. Sometimes there are other formatting options that we can consult in a separate or kind of another menu, an additional menu. So in this case, all these different shadow options, you'll see at the bottom shadow options here. If I click on that, it's going to open up on the right side what's called a pane, a P-A-N-E, like a window pane. All right, and you'll see this again in other Office applications, Excel. In fact, we'll see this in Excel 3 today for those of you attending Excel 3 later. Okay, so whenever we have to get into more kind of nuanced or more detailed formatting choices, we usually do that through a formatting pane like this. So in this case, if I need to change the color of the shadow, I need to do it here. So on the right side, you'll see color, and I just change that color to whatever I want it to be. It may be red, like so. Again, just a kind of a little heads up that you might be confronted, or you might find yourself having to use these one of these special formatting panes, no matter what Office program you're using. Now, to close that pane, to get it out of my view, I'll just go to the upper right and click on the X to close it. All right, so again, styles, like we saw with WordArt, think of them as templates. It's a set of formatting options that are already built, ready to go, but you can customize them however you want, just like regular templates. Now, one more thing I want to do with our text here. Okay, now we were able to center it horizontally through the Home tab. But if something that's a bit more unique to text boxes, something we don't really encounter on the page itself too much, is a vertical center or vertical alignment. Okay, so let's just pretend, in fact, it's kind of hard to see it right now, but there is a little more space underneath the text than there is above it. That's because it's not centered vertically. So in other words, this way, okay, the text is a little bit towards the top end than it is towards the bottom. It's not centered vertically. So I want to change that. Let me just get rid of my pen here. Okay, so we can do that. We have to use the special format tab because, like I said, this is something that's you encounter more with objects, not really on the page itself. So again, select your text box, and up there is the text group because we're talking about text. We're going to go to align text, and then we'll select middle, and now it's centered vertically. All right. Again, another kind of little Office bonus tip. Whenever you see center, or typically when you see the term center, that's horizontal. When you see middle, that's vertical. All right. And the nice thing about that is that if I end up resizing my text box at any time, it's going to stay centered vertically. Okay, so it will just conform to the new dimensions. Now I'm just going to click undo to put it back to 1 inch. All right, so one more thing with this text box. I want to give the text box itself a color. I want to fill it in with a color. So next to WordArt styles up there to the left is shape styles. All right, same idea. Notice it's the same options. We have styles that from which we can select. And then we can also customize each of those elements using fill, outline, or effects, just like we saw with the text under WordArt. All right, so instead of using a style, I'll just go to shape fill and just give it a fill color, maybe yellow, like this. All right, and when you're practicing on your own, of course, you could always kind of toy around with the other options. We'll just keep it simple in this case, just a fill color for the background of the text box. All right, last but not least, the text box We need to make sure that it is centered on the page horizontally left to right. The text is, but is the text box itself centered on the page underneath of it? We want to make sure. So there are a couple ways we could accomplish this. One way is to use alignment guides. So if you, let me just see. Yeah, let's do it this way. If you point at the outline of the text box, get your 4-way arrow. Remember, that's how we can click, hold, and drag, and then move it around. All right, if I move it maybe kind of left and right, back and forth, I will eventually see. In this case, you know what? In this case, I'm actually touching the margin, so I'm not going to see it. I did it too perfectly. I did it too well. Let me do this. Okay, there it is. There is a vertical center guide. Also note the top margin guide. So I know that I'm touching the top margin. I'm not crossing over it, and it's also centered perfectly on the page. All right, those are called alignment guides. All right, furthermore, if I was to stretch out the right side, I would see a right margin. If I stretch out the left, I will eventually see a left margin. Okay, and it's still centered, of course, because if I'm touching each margin, that means it's centered. Now, if you're not seeing the alignment guides, they might be turned off. In your Arrange group in that special Format tab is the Align tool. All right, click on Align, and down towards the bottom, you'll see Use Alignment Guides. Make sure that's turned on. If there's no check mark, just click it to turn it on, and then you'll see the alignment guides. Okay, also, another way is kind of like how we saw changing the alignment of the text in the text group. You could also change the alignment of the text box in the Arrange group. You'll see Align here, right where we saw the alignment guides, but above we see Align Center. That's the horizontal alignment, like we just did. And there's Middle, if you want it to be vertically centered on the page, like so. You could do that too. Let me just undo this. All right, but that's just another way to center it quickly. Horizontally is just to select the text box and then just go to Align Center rather than using the alignment guide. That's really up to you. All right, I'm going to do a quick save to update my document. I'll just go to the upper left-hand corner, to the quick access toolbar, click on the little save disk to update this document. If you don't have that save disk, just go to your file menu and click save here. All right, so now that we've covered a lot of the different options we can apply to an object, in this case a text box, we're going to create 2 more text boxes, but we'll move much faster because we already kind of covered a lot of the tools up there. So this time we'll just kind of use what we learned and just build these very quickly. So I'm going to put another text box under this one, which is going to contain a message. Now, before I insert a new one, I'm going to make sure I deselect or unselect this one. Just click anywhere outside of it, and you should see those dots go away. I just do that because if it's still selected and we go to insert a new one, sometimes the options aren't the same. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So now that I've unselected it, I'm going to go back up to my Insert tab, go over to the right to the text group and go to text box. And once again, go to toward the bottom and click on Draw Text Box. There's our draw cursor, there's the plus sign, and I'll just use the one that's already on the page as a kind of template. I'll just kind of match the dimensions, also the location, left to right. Again, if it's not exact, that's okay. I just want to get it approximately the same size. And I also want it to be, not going into the margins like the one above it. So there we go. So remember, you just click, hold, and drag. It works faster if you go diagonally, and then once it's to your desired size, you just let go. All right, and if you look in my special format tab, over to the right in the size group, mine is 1.01 inches high, so maybe I'll just change it to 1 inch exactly by just clicking into that box, putting in a 1, pressing enter. Boom. All right, so now we're in the second text box, and there's the blinking insertion point. We're ready to go. Let's type in our message here, which is going to say, sign up today to receive our free newsletter. Now there's another sentence, I want to put it in its own paragraph. So when we type into a text box, the same rules apply as if we're typing right onto the page. So if I need to do a paragraph, I press the enter key. This sentence will say, upon registering, comma, space, you will be entered to win a tasty pastry apron. And I'll put an exclamation point, which is Shift 1 on the keyboard. All right, so we want to do some of the same things we did to the first text box. We won't go quite as crazy. We'll just do a few things just to keep moving. So first of all, let's select the entire text box. So point at the outline. When you see that 4-way arrow, click, and the whole text box will be selected. Now we go up to that. Actually, let's start with the Home tab. So go to your Home tab, and let's go to font size where it says 11. And we're going to make it 14. Next door is the font itself. We're going to change that from Calibri to, it's called Script MT Bold. Script, S as in Sam, SCRIPT. So I'll scroll down to the S's. In fact, I think it's the first S in the list, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, it is right there, right? Yes, Script MT Bold. I'll click on it, and there it is. While we're in the Home tab, let's also center this horizontally. So I'll go to the paragraph group and click on Center Alignment. Now, I'm not worried about, we're going to leave the font the way it is. We don't need to use word art here. It's just a simple message. We also don't even want to color or fill in the text box with a color. The only other thing I want to do to this is make sure it's aligned middle, so vertical center. So with the text box selected, go to your Special Format tab under Drawing Tools. And right underneath is the text group. Click on Align Text and then go to Middle. Boom. All right, now let's click outside that text box just to or deselect it. And you might not like the way the outlines on the text box looks. Don't worry, we're going to get rid of those later, but we're going to leave them for now. All right, we're going to do one more text box. So make sure you unselect that text box or deselect it. Let's go up to that special, I'm sorry, not the special one. Let's go up to the Insert tab. And again, go over to the right to the text group, click on Text Box. And we'll go down toward the bottom, click on Draw Text Box to get our draw cursor. And once again, I will match, at least try to match the dimensions of the one above it. Oh, you know, I forgot to center it. We'll come back to that. That's one thing I forgot to do, but we will return to that. There we go. Perfect. Good enough for now. Okay, so our blinking insertion point is in the text box. Actually, let me make sure I'm 1 full inch. I'll go up to my size group here in that Special Format tab and change the vertical dimension to 1. Press Enter. Boom. Perfect. All right, now in the text box, we're going to type in the following, which is going to be much shorter than the one above it. It's just going to say Bon Appetit. A-P-P-E-T-I-T. Like this. All right, now, just a quick side note. Appetit, technically to be spelled correctly, needs an accent. We will add that later. In fact, older versions of Word, like Word 2013, used to flag this as a spelling error. Now it doesn't for some reason, but it does technically need an accent mark. Again, we'll add that at the end of class. Let's just leave it alone for now. So, and you might, if you're using an older version of Word, you might see it flagged as a spelling error with a red underline. Again, just ignore it. We'll come back to it and fix it later. So, let's go to our Home tab, or first click on the text box. Make sure the whole text box is selected. Go to our Home tab. Let's go to the font group, go to font size, and change it from 11 to 22. All right, next door, where it says Calibri, let's use the same font we used in the first text box, which was called Bauhaus 93. And there it is. And then while we're in the Home tab, we will center it horizontally. So I'll go over to the paragraph group and click on Center Alignment. All right, now we want to just add a couple more commands, but we have to go to our special Format tab now. So under Drawing Tools, click on Format up there in the ribbon. Let's center it, or vertically, or align middle, as it says. So right underneath in the text group, go to Align Text and go to Middle. And in this case, if you want to just quickly add a word art style, that's fine. I'll just go to the word art styles group and just use one of these styles. And maybe I'll just change it to a different color this time. I'll just do the fill color. I'm not going to worry about the effect or the outline. So I'll just go up to text fill here and maybe change it to, that's a good color right there. All right, and once again, if you wanted to give your text box some artistic flair, fill it in with a color, give it a different outline color, give it an effect like a shadow or 3D, those would be handled in your shape styles group here. But we're not going to do that because we do want to keep moving onto our next object. Now, after all that hard work, let's go ahead and save. And before I forget, let's make sure that the second and third text boxes are centered on the page horizontally. So I'll start with the second one. And in this case, I'll select it. And I usually use the alignment guides. That's just how I prefer to do it. So I'll go to the left center sizing handle, click and drag kind of left to right until I see the left margin, like so. There's the green line. I'll do the same thing on the right. And there it is. Now, if I'm touching each margin, that means that I'm centered. Okay, it's centered horizontally on the page. I'll do the same thing to the text box underneath. So on the left side, move it left and right until I see that green alignment guide. There it is. And then I'll do the same thing on the right. Boom. Now they're all perfectly centered on the page. And once again, I'll do a quick save to update my file. All right, I'm going to scroll down a bit. Make sure none of your text boxes are selected right now. So you should not see any special menu in your ribbon. That's how you know none of your text boxes are selected. And what we're going to do now is insert another object, in this case, a table. And that table is going to include some information about what customers are going to find in this newsletter. So tables kind of operate by, they're kind of tricky. All right, they take a little bit of practice. Sometimes they operate a bit differently or behave a bit differently than other objects. But so what I'd like to do is just kind of talk about how we put the table on the page in the first place, and then we'll get into formatting it and typing into it. So let's go to our Insert tab, and right under the Insert tab itself, we have the Tables group, and there's a tool called Table. Now click on Table, and let's just look at the options. So remember earlier, if you remember, I talked about the difference between inserting an object and drawing an object. up to this point, we've been drawing objects. We get the plus sign and we just put them wherever we want. When we insert an object, it goes where the insertion point is, okay? So in this case, I personally find it easier to insert tables, but in addition to inserting them, you can, before you insert it, decide how many columns and rows you want in that table. All right. So in other words, you could insert it first and then kind of build it as you go in terms of columns and rows. Or if you know ahead of time what you want, you could use this tool here to assemble it, and then with one single click, it will insert it. But before I do that, notice where it was putting it at the top. That's because my insertion point is still at the top. So if I scroll down, I will just double click underneath the third text box anywhere to force that insertion point down. Oops. My word is being a little bit tricky today. Make sure that's not selected. Let's try this again. There it is. Come on, text boxes. I wonder if it's, no, it shouldn't be. Let me make sure that the wrap text didn't change for some reason. No, it should be the same. Okay. There we go. Okay. It can be a little bit tricky, but usually, I don't want to say always, but usually when you double click, you kind of force that insertion point down to a new location rather than a single click. And now I can just move it up. There we go. So I'm under that third text box. So now this is where the table is going to go. All right. So I'm going to go back to the insert tab. I'll click on table. And what I want is I want 2 columns and 4 rows. Columns are the vertical axis, rows are the horizontal. So you'll notice if I just point at the first cell, the top left, like so, I'm not clicking, I'm just pointing. Look at the page, the table starts to build itself. So now I have 1 column by 1 row. So if I want 2 columns, I'll point at the cell to the right like this, and now I have 2 columns, 1 row. Notice the line in the middle on the table itself. So now if I just move down, my mouse pointer down, I'll have 2 by 2, 2 by 3. Move it down one more time, we have 2 by 4. 2 columns, 4 rows. Once you're pointing at that last cell, just give it a single click, and there's your table. All right. So tables, like I said, they behave a bit differently, but first of all, notice we do get a special contextual tab in the ribbon, or contextual menu, excuse me, called Table Tools. And in that Table Tools menu are 2 tabs, Design and Layout, which we don't really need for today's exercises too much, but there are several tools available to you up there in terms of aligning the contents in each cell, changing the borders, if you don't want any borders, if you want specific borders to have a different look, things like that. All right. Creating new rows and columns, which is something we could also do on the page. We'll come to that. But again, just as you practice, you can kind of familiarize yourself with several of these tools up here in the Table Tools menu. But let's return to the table itself. So down here, in the top left corner, you have this little box with a 4-way arrow in it. If you point at it, you will also get a 4-way arrow. So moving a table, if we want to move it, we have to use that box. And there's the 4-way arrow. We click and drag, and we can move it. Now, notice where it is. Moving tables can be a bit tricky, especially when there are other objects on the page. Okay. So for now, we're just going to leave it where it is. Okay. But it is possible to make a change that allows you to kind of move it with a bit more flexibility. For now, just leave it right where it is. If you did move it, remember you could just use undo from your quick access toolbar, the left turning arrow, to put it back to where it was. Also, if you click on that box to the fore arrow, you will select the whole table. So for example, if each cell in the table had text and I wanted to change all of the text to a different font size, I could just select the whole table like this, change my font size, and it will just apply to everything in the table across the board. All right. Last but not least, in the bottom right corner of the table is a little box here. Notice the two-way arrow that I get. There's the resize cursor. So if I need to resize this table, this is one way to do it. All right, we're not going to worry about resizing it right now, but you can do it like this. And if you resize this way, notice that your rows, your row heights, and your column widths left to right, they will stay equal. All right, you can customize them. So row 1 might be shorter than row 2, for example, and we'll come to that as we go through. But we probably won't really need to worry about it because of the way it's set up. Okay, so again, we won't really need to worry about resizing it because, as we're going to see, the table dimensions will conform to what we type into it. All right, so your blinking insertion point should be in the first cell, top first column, first row, or I should say top row, first column. So into that cell, we're going to type in, let me just see here. In this issue. All right, now let's just go underneath, click on the next cell. So we're on column 1, row 2. And we're going to type in from the editor. I'm going to put a colon there. If you're not familiar with the colon, it is the semicolon key and you with the shift key, like so. So it's the key to the right of the letter L on the keyboard. Shift and then that key. There's your colon. Now I want to create a new paragraph, so I'll press the enter key. And as I said, notice how the row height in this case is opening up. It's conforming to the lines or paragraphs in that row in this case. So this is going to say our hands-on classes give you an opportunity to, and text wrap still applies like it does on the actual page. So if I need more space, it will just give me another line automatically. To get your hands dirty. And if you're looking for that dash or hyphen, by the way, here, that is to the right of the number 0 on the keyboard, that key. All right, we're going to go down to the next cell. And we're going to type in featured recipes. Oops, featured, there we go, recipes. Keeps making spelling errors, there we go. And underneath that, we're going to type in quick tips from the chef. I'm going to press the enter key. In fact, I'm going to press it twice to put a space between that and the next line. It's going to say icing too thin, question, oops, I keep making spelling errors, question mark. All right, the question mark is to the left of the right shift key, and you do need the shift key to get it. I'm going to press enter for another paragraph. This is going to say, need a quick chocolate glaze, question mark. Enter one more time, and we're going to put in ... and many other useful tidbits, exclamation point. All right, one last cell we're going to type into, the top right. So column 2, row 1. Click into it. All right, now in a second we're going to type in, we'll type in February newsletter 2022. Before we do that, we have 2 columns. So we basically have like a left half of the page and a right half. It might look better, since all this text is aligned left, it might look better if this text is aligned right to create essentially 2 halves. So you can type first, or you can set up your alignment first. It doesn't matter. I'm going to set up my alignment first. I'll go to the Home tab. Remember, we can still use these basic formatting tools even with a table. In the Home tab, I'm going to go to the paragraph group, click on Right Alignment. My insertion point moves to the right, and then I'll type in February newsletter 2020, or actually February 2022 newsletter, excuse me, like that. All right, now, just a few more things about tables, and then we're going to talk about pictures. First of all, if you ever need to resize rows or columns to like a custom size, so they're not, so in other words, if the left column should be, if you want it more narrow than the one on the right, all right, you can do that. And the quickest way is just to use your mouse pointer. So if I click on the, if I point, excuse me, at the line dividing the left and right columns, you'll see that my cursor changes it to a two-way arrow, left and right. And if I click and drag in either direction, I can resize my columns. Let me put it back. Same thing with your row heights. All right, in fact, maybe row 1 should be, well, we'll come to that. I don't want to jump to that yet. But if you point between 2 rows, you'll get a two-way arrow that's vertical. And if you click and drag up or down, you can resize. In this case, it would be the row above it, above that two-way arrow. All right, but I'm going to click undo to put it back the way it was. Oops. There we go, for now. And that's perfect. All right, also, if you want to add columns and rows after the fact, same idea, but instead of inside the table, if you go to the outside, let's say I want to add a row. If I point at the outside between 2 rows, oh, actually, I think it's only on the left. There it is. You'll get a plus sign like this, and you can add a row between 2 existing rows. All right, with a column, if I go, same thing, between 2 columns, but on the outside of the table, I'll get a plus sign here to insert a new column between those 2. Okay, or I can go to the very right to put one on the right side, and I should get one on the left if I get it just right. It's a little tricky though, with that 4-way arrow there. All right. Oh, and rows, I should mention. It doesn't have to be between 2 existing. I could add one to the end, for example. All right. So that's the quickest way to do that. Also, in your Table Tools menu, if you go to the Layout tab, and in the table group all the way to the left, if you go to Properties, okay, where we see text wrapping, if you change that to around, you typically can move the text box around a bit more reliably, especially if there are other objects on the page. As you can see, remember before it was kind of locked into that line space. In this case, I could move it around more freely if I change that text wrap from none to around. Again, that was in the Table Tools menu, Layout tab, Properties on the left. Okay, and last but not least, if you ever want to change the alignment of your text in a table, kind of like what we were doing with the text boxes before. Let's say I want all my text to be middle, so it's vertically centered. All right, in your layout tab, you'll have your alignment group, and you'll see a whole bunch of different alignment options. And they show you exactly what they'll look like. All right, so there's just, that's both middle and center. So you could always use those. And remember, you could always select the whole table and change everything in one shot to a specific alignment, font size, whatever it might be. Okay, let's move on to pictures. In the remaining 3 cells, we are going to insert pictures. So click into this cell here, which is column 2, row 2. All right, kind of like the table, when we insert pictures, we do in fact insert them. We don't draw them. So we need to set up our insertion point first to set up our location for the picture. So let's go to our Insert tab. And in the illustrations group, again, a lot of these icons will probably look different for you. That's okay. It's just my screen resolution. You will see pictures and you'll see online pictures. All right, pictures will insert a picture you have saved on your computer. That's why it says from file. Online pictures allows you to search the internet for pictures and use those. Okay, so we're going to use online pictures for this one. So let's click on online pictures. And sometimes the pictures is a little bit glitchy. Let me try it again. I'm not getting my search tool. And let's try this time. I'm still not getting it. I'm telling you, my Microsoft Word on this computer today is just acting up. Acting out, I should say. Let's try it again. There we go. So this is what it should look like. So we have this big pictures box with a number of categories, but obviously you can look for whatever picture you want by using the search box at the top. So let me just kind of move this to the side for 1 second, or underneath. So what we want to do here is we want each picture to correspond to what's on the left. So in other words, we want this one to relate to editor, we want this picture to relate to recipes, and this picture to relate to chef. So we're starting with editor. Now the picture I use typically is a typewriter, but if something else comes to mind for editor, that's fine. So I'm going to type in typewriter as my search term. Typewriter. And I'll press enter to search. And what it's doing is it's searching the Microsoft Bing search engine. Okay. And then we got a bunch of pictures. Perfect. So a couple things before we select a picture. First of all, notice the Creative Commons filter with a check mark. All right, Creative Commons is a license essentially that it just means that if a picture has a Creative Commons license, it is part of the public domain. You don't need any kind of permission or in terms of copyright to use the picture and then distribute it to people. It's public domain, so it's free to use. So we're going to leave that checked off. Also, many of these pictures are like real life photos of a typewriter. If you wanted a drawing of one, you could just be more specific with your search terms. So you could put in typewriter drawing, press enter, and you'll get something more like this. All right, it's really up to you. I just want to remind you that you could always customize your search terms or tailor them to the result that you really want. So now when we insert pictures, you can insert more than one at the same time. And you just have to give them, so let's just say I wanted to insert these first 4. I just click on them individually. I don't need the control key or anything like that. And they all have check marks. And down below it says insert 4. But I only want one, so I can also deselect them. Just go up, click on them again to get rid of the selections. Now I just have one selected. It says insert 1. I'll click on that. And it's probably going to be way too big. That's okay. There it is. Now, oftentimes when we insert pictures, especially from online, they're way too big. But that's okay because, as we know, we can move objects, we can resize objects. So Notice the selection box around the picture, much like we saw with the text box. We have the sizing handles that allows us to resize it, and we can move it. We'll come to those things in a little bit. Also, we get a special menu. Look above, we have a picture tools menu and a special format tab. All right, picture styles is a popular group there. Again, we have styles, which means that these are ready-made, built-in sets of formatting options to allow us to quickly add some artistic flair to this picture. All right, there are other options, and we'll probably consult a few of them as we go through. Again, that's the picture tools menu in that special format tab. So the first thing I should do is resize this picture. Obviously, it's way too big. So when you resize pictures, it's always best to work from a corner handle. All right, because you want to resize it diagonally so that it's so you're not changing the aspect ratio, so the dimensions are still proportionate. Otherwise, it might get stretched out and look distorted. Now, before I do that, I always forget about this because it's newer to Word. This little tag here. Sometimes when we insert pictures now in Microsoft Office, we get these little captions at the bottom, and it just has to do with essentially the author of that picture, if one is listed. Now that little caption it's actually its own little text box. So what I'm going to do is click on the outline of the text box with my 4-way arrow, and then just press delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. I'll do it again. Just click into that text box so you see the outline. Click on the outline itself with your 4-way arrow so you select the whole text box, and then press delete on your keyboard, and that will just get rid of it. That's right, just undo. Make sure you're only selecting the text box. There you go, perfect. So now I'm going to resize the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bottom right corner, this sizing handle, click and drag in an upward left, diagonal direction. And remember, you don't have to do it all in one motion. If you're running out of screen space, just drop it. And if you have to, scroll up a little more and then start over again. And for now, let's see here. I'm going to do this again 1 inch, like we saw other text boxes. So you can also remember, you could just force it with your size group up there in the Picture Tools Format tab. So Picture Tools Format, just like with drawing tools with our text boxes, remember I told you that some of these groups are repeated: Arrange group, Size group. So if you're under Picture Tools in that Format tab, you go to the right to the Size group, you can just type in a 1 into that vertical dimension and just force it to 1 inch. Boom, done. Okay, the only issue is just it should maintain the aspect ratio as a default. Let me just see. Yes, it does. See where it says lock aspect ratio? So if you resize one dimension manually like this in the size group, it will resize the other one so it's not distorted. Just wanted to make sure that was turned on before I give you the wrong instructions. Okay, now we want to maybe move the picture to the right, kind of under where it says February 22 newsletter, but I do get a 4-way arrow, which if you remember, that's my cursor for moving objects. But if I click, hold, and drag, it's not going to move. And that is because of something called wrap text. So make sure your picture's selected. Okay, let's go up to that special format tab under Picture Tools. And in the Arrange group, you will see wrap text. If you point at it, it says choose how your text wraps around the selected object. So a consideration we often have to, something we often have to consider when we are putting objects onto the page is how the text on the page itself, if there is any, is going to kind of behave with that object. Or do we want it to be able to wrap around the object on the left and right sides? Or do we want it to kind of block it off and the text can only go underneath of it? Again, this is if we're typing directly onto the page. So pictures in Microsoft Word, they are set to what's called inline with text. So if you click on wrap text for the drop-down options, you'll see the very first one listed is called inline with text, which basically means that it's locking it into a line space on the page. So it's kind of treating it like text, where we can't just move text around. So if we want to be able to move it freely, we could really just change it to any of these, okay? And I will say that sometimes these take a bit of practice, getting used to the different text orientations, wrap text orientations. But just to kind of make things easy in this case, we're just going to select square. Oh, do I have lines there? There we go. And now I can just kind of move it to where it needs to go. And if yours didn't drop down like mine did, that's okay. Usually it doesn't. Again, something's just in the air today, I guess. Okay. But as you saw now, I'm able to move it with that four-way arrow wherever it needs to go. And also remember the table, the dimensions are conforming to where I put it essentially. All right. Now, if you're wondering what that little anchor is, okay, that is basically just telling you where the line space is in that cell in the table. So whenever you change your object to anything other than inline with text, Word is going to let you know where the text is going to be if you start typing. It's going to start where that anchor is. All right, now let's insert two more pictures. Now that we kind of understand how all this works, we can move a bit faster. So let's go down to the next row next to featured recipes. So column 2, row 3. Let's insert another picture. So I'll go to the Insert tab. I'll go to the Illustrations group, and I'll go to Online Pictures. All right. In my search box, I'll type in, you could try recipe. If you want to try cookbook, it's really up to you. I'm going to do recipe drawing because I don't want a real life photo. Recipe drawing. Let's see what I get. Actually, this is perfect right here. I like that. Yeah, sometimes people try cookbook, they get good results. It's really up to you. So I've selected a picture. I'll go to the bottom right, click on Insert. Again, it's way too big. That's okay because I can fix it. And the first thing I'll do is I'll scroll down. I'm going to make sure there's no caption this time. Actually, there's not, so I don't have to worry about deleting anything. If there is a caption, remember, click into that caption. Click on the outline of the text box. Okay, because that caption is inside of a text box, and then press delete on your keyboard. You're gonna see the four-way arrow. Click on the outline of the text box with that four-way arrow, and then press delete on your keyboard. Now I can resize this picture, so I'll go to the bottom right and work in an upward left diagonal direction. And remember, when I run out of space with my mouse pointer, I'll just let it go and start over again. But another option is to just go up to the Format tab, under Picture Tools, go to the Size group, go to the vertical height, just put in a 1, press Enter, and there it is. Just forces it to that precise dimension. And it maintained the aspect ratio, so it's not distorted. One thing I forgot to mention, sometimes this happens especially if we're clicking and dragging to resize, we inadvertently, we actually rotate it, okay, which can happen. So if that happens, you'll see the rotation tool right above it, okay? It looks like a circular arrow. If you click, hold, and drag and move your mouse in a circular motion, you can rotate it, okay? If the rotation was a different way, maybe horizontally, that's something you can fix up here in the ribbon in the Format tab under Picture Tools, if you go to, in the Arrange group, you have Rotate here, Rotate Objects. You could do different rotations, or you can go to more rotation options for really all kinds of rotations. Again, that doesn't always happen. It's just something we do by accident sometimes when we are resizing pictures. All right, now I want to move that picture to the right underneath the typewriter, but before I do that, I have to change the wrap text option. So with that picture selected, I'll go up to the Arrange group, go to Wrap Text, change it to Square, and then I can go down to the picture, point at it, get my 4-way arrow, click and drag, and move it to the right. Last but not least, let's click into the last cell here, column 2, row 4, and this time we're going to insert a picture of a chef. So I'm going to go up to the Insert tab, go to the Illustrations group, go to Online Pictures. In my search box, I'll type in chef. Again, I'm going to do drawing. I don't want I mean, you can. If you want like a picture of a chef, a real life photo, that's fine. I'm just going to use a drawing in my case. Oops. All right, and I'll just select one of these, and then I'll click Insert. All right, way too big. First, let me see if there's any tag attached to it, a little caption. There it is. So let me remove that first. I'll just click basically onto the text to get inside the text box. Then when you see the outline, point at the outline, get your 4-way arrow, click on the text box itself, and then press delete on your keyboard. And now it's gone. So now I'm going to resize it. So you could either use the click and drag method to practice, or remember, since we know in this case we want to just make it 1 inch, as long as the picture is selected, I could just go to my Picture Tools Format tab, go to the very right to the size group, click into the vertical dimension box, put in a 1, press enter, and there it is. Now I want to move that picture to the right, so I need to just change the wrap text option. So with the picture selected, I'll go up to the Picture Tools Format tab. I'll go to Wrap Text here in the Arrange group, and I'll change it to Square. I'll go back down to the picture, point at it. Oops, oh, it did that again, that's okay. Click on it, I'll get my 4-way arrow, click, hold, and drag, and move it underneath of the recipe picture. All right, now one last thing I want to do with this table. I don't like the way that row 1 is so short. All right, I know I don't have any pictures, but maybe I want to make it just, I want a little more space between, in this issue and then what's beneath of it. So what I'll do is I'll just resize the height of row 1 a little bit. So using what I showed you before, I'll bring my mouse pointer up between rows 1 and 2, like this. Notice the 2-way arrow pointing up and down. If I click, hold, and drag down, it will resize the row above. So you're pulling down. And I'll just go maybe about there, looks good, and I'll let go. That looks pretty good. Just a little bit more space there. Now I'm going to do a quick save to update my document. All right, we're going to do a few more things and then we're done. Let's get rid of the outlines. I don't like the outlines on the table. I don't like the outlines on my text boxes. So the first text box, we're just going to leave that one alone. It has the fill color, so it kind of looks nice with an outline. The next two, however, I don't want to see the actual box. So Let's click on text box 2. Remember, click on the outline with your 4A arrow and you will select the whole text box. So in that Drawing Tools Format tab, click on that Format tab. And remember where we talked about shape styles, we talked about changing the outline if we want to a different color. Well, we can also get rid of the outline entirely. So go to Shape Outline. Again, Shape Styles Group, Shape Outline. Bypass the colors, and you'll see no outline. You also see more options. You could change the weight of the line, the look of the line, things I encourage you to explore when you're practicing. But in this case, we're just going to select no outline. And if you click outside of it, you'll see it's gone. And I'm going to do the third text box, select it. Again, go to the Special Format tab, go to the Shape Styles group, Shape Outline, and select no outline. And the reason we're doing this now, the reason we didn't do it earlier is because when you're building something like this and you're aligning objects next to each other, it helps to have the outline so you can see where one ends and one begins, so you're not crossing into each other, right? So that's why I always wait until everything's situated and then I get rid of the outlines. Now I want to do the table. This is a bit different. In the case of the table, it's not calling them outlines, it's calling them borders, but you could do the same thing. First of all, select your entire table. How do we do that? Click on the box in the upper left-hand corner here. That selects the entire table. Now, in your Special Table Tools menu above, we're going to go to the Design tab because we're talking about the overall design of the table. To the right, we see the Borders group. We see the Borders drop-down. Click on that. This is how you can change. You can just have an outside border, nothing inside. You can do all sorts of things. Again, I encourage you to explore these. But in our case, we don't want any borders, so we'll just click on no border. And now that's how it looks. I'm going to do a quick save. All right, now, the next thing I want to do is I want to fix that Bon Appetit. I want it to be spelled correctly. So we need that accent. So when we're using Microsoft Word, or really any other Office program, and there's a symbol you need that is not on your keyboard, we need to use the library that's in the program itself. And they call it symbols. Okay, so let's go to our Insert tab because we need to insert a symbol onto the page. And all the way to the right is your symbols group. All right, so things like accent marks, the trademark symbol, copyright symbol, mathematical operators, mathematical symbols, a whole bunch of stuff. All right, things that we sometimes need but are not found on our keyboard. You will likely find them in this symbol group here. Now, remember, we're inserting the symbol, and when we insert it, it's going to have the E already with the accent mark over it, which means that I'm just going to replace the existing E with the new one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the E in Bon Appetit like this first, because when I select my new symbol, it's just going to replace it. So select that E in Bon Appetit. Now I'm going to go to the symbol dropdown in the symbols group. I'll go down to more symbols, and here's the whole library. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, so we're not going to scroll through. Because it might take you a long time to find the exact one we need. So where it says character code here, character code, all right, type in 00E9, and that will be the exact symbol we need. You'll notice that it will select that one in your library. It might be in a different location than mine, that's okay, but it's going to be the lowercase e with that diagonal accent over it. So 00E9, type it in, press enter. It will select, oops, let me do mine again. All right, and then I click insert, Oh, I must have did it already without realizing it. Let me get rid of that. And then just click close for the dialog box. And then if you look at your Bon Appetit, it should be the new E with the accent over it. All right, I'm going to do a quick save. Last but not least, we want a page border, and then we'll be all set with our newsletter. So as I said, a page border, remember, it's not an object. It's a design feature. It's something that we just embed into the actual document. So it's a design feature, so we go to the Design tab. All right, these include a bunch of different kind of built-in ready-made designs for how you want your document formatted in terms of its layout, in case you ever want to explore these. But in our case, what we're really concerned with is the page background group on the right, and we're going to select page borders. It's going to open up your borders and shading dialog box, and you will see these three tabs: borders, page border, shading. All right, page border will be selected, and I'll come back to those tabs in 1 second. I do want to touch on those. With page border selected, you just need to make sure you're choosing the right setting. So we're going to click on box. We don't want a shadow or anything. We just want kind of a standard border. So click on box. And then on the right, you choose how you want the line to look, the color, and the width or the thickness. But we can also do something a bit different. We can go down to art. And if you click on the art dropdown, you'll see that it gives you pictures for your border. We have a bakery. The third one down is a piece of cake. I'm going to click on that. And I could still change the width, but it's set to 31 points. Okay. Click OK, and we'll see how it looks. All right. Now, the issue is it's blocking my header. So I need to change the width, make it smaller. All I have to do is go back. So up there in the Design tab, all the way to the right, click on Page Borders, and just change the width. Again, I've done this before. Usually it would take you some trial and error to get it just right, but just make it 12. Click OK. And now it's not blocking your header. Now, borders, by the way, you also have access to them in your Home tab in the paragraph group here, because you can also place borders around specific selections, like a sentence maybe. So you would target it first. You would isolate that portion of text and then apply your border. You could also do it around a paragraph. Okay. So again, in the Home tab, in the paragraph group, you have your borders drop down. You can go to borders and shading at the bottom. Okay, and it's the same dialog box. It's just the borders tab instead of the page border tab. All right, and you'll see here apply to paragraph, or if there's something selected, it would say apply to selection. All right, so let's do one last quick save. I'm going to go to the print screen to see how this looks. And there it is. All right, now remember, if you're not too happy with the spacing of the table, I probably could have kind of opened everything up to bring it down the page more. You can always tweak it a little bit. All right, and also I want to point out with tables, if you need to see where the rows and columns are, the lines, you don't have to add your borders back. You can just go click into the table to get your table tools menu up above. If you go to your layout tab to the left in the table group, you'll see view grid lines. And there they are. And then you can resize as needed, like we did before. All right, again, those are just grid lines. They're not going to print out. It just shows you that on the screen. So you can make adjustments as needed. All right, so if for those of you attending virtually, if you have any further questions about what we covered today, now would be a good time to submit them to the GoToMeeting chat. Otherwise, I'll go through a few closing remarks and then we'll be all set for Word 3 today. And that is our newsletter. So, oops, that's the wrong presentation. There it is. So thank you for coming to Word 3 today. The next class in our Word series will be Word 4 next week, Thursday, February 24th at 10 a.m. All right, in that class, we're going to be primarily covering creating our own templates. And we're going to create a template using many of the things we talked about today. Okay, so more objects. And then we're going to shift gears and talk about mail merge. So how we can very quickly create batch labels and form letters so that in this kind of scenario where we're mailing out something to 200 people, all right, we don't have to create 200 individual letters. We could just create one letter and then create essentially 200 copies of it, each one addressed to a specific person. All right, so that's what we're going to cover in Word 4 next week. Now remember that this class was recorded. It will be available on our library's YouTube channel on our computer instruction playlist. So just visit mcl.org for our library website. Click on the YouTube icon at the top left of the homepage. All right, and that will take you to our YouTube channel. And once you're there, go to playlists and then select computer instruction. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning of class, remember that we do have handouts available for most of our classes, including this one. To get to those handouts, go to our website at mcl.org, click on Services from the main menu, and then select Technology Instruction. Once you're on the Technology Instruction webpage, you will see, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see all the handouts listed by the name of the class. And as always, from that same Technology Instruction page, you can from there register for more classes. All right, so just click on the register button. There's one for in-person, there's one for online. It doesn't matter which one you click. They both take you to the same computer class calendar where you can register for whatever classes interest you. And the March classes will be up sometime early next week. All right, and they'll be available for registration by the end of next week. All right, and also remember that we are offering our virtual private sessions on select Fridays, including this coming Friday. All right, tomorrow, I should say. So these are also in our same calendar with the other classes. In these virtual private sessions, we work with just you individually on a project you might need some help with that you're doing on your computer, a Word document, an Excel worksheet, something like that. Or maybe you need some help troubleshooting your tech device. Sometimes we can help with that as well. So if you want to sign up for one of these, just go to our computer class calendar and follow the link for a private session and then follow the instructions to book your appointment. All right, and again, the March ones will be up soon, so just check back for those. But I have to stress that right now these are virtual only. If you have any other questions about our technology instruction program, you can always email us at techclass@mcl.org. All right, if you have no further questions at this time, you can click on the X at the top of the GoToMeeting window and then select Leave Meeting. If you are leaving us, thanks so much for coming, and we hope to see you again in class very soon. Take care.